Good morning. Thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Mary Rowell, and I am a longtime friend of Ann. My son Hunter and her son have been friends since 5th grade and did pretty much everything together. I currently attend the Parents Addiction Network meetings. I sit on the AODA committee for Dane County Schools, and I'm also the parent of an addict who also carries a mental health diagnosis. I'm here today to talk about the difficulty and struggles of loving someone with these diagnoses. I also want to express the value of loving someone with these illnesses. You would think it would be all one-sided, but the truth is you receive so much when you find a way to love the difficult. I hope my words today help lift the veil of shame associated with addiction. My husband and I, John, met and were married on September 21st of 1991. So we've been married a couple of years now. We purchased a house in DeForest, small town, a little bigger than Rio, but still, small rural community, a lot of farms. And we began our lives together. Our first child was born on March 17th, 1993, a beautiful St. Patrick's baby, and we named him Conrad. His birth taught me how deep love can be. I was caught off guard by the amount of love I felt. It seemed impossible you could love another human being so deeply. We soon discovered that we had a very difficult baby. He cried constantly, ate inconsistently, and slept poorly. In those moments where exhaustion and frustration crept in, it was love that kept me from losing it. Being our first, we certainly had nothing to compare his behavior to. On June 23rd of 95, this changed when our second son came along. It was very quickly became clear Conrad was in a class of his own. Having Hunter magnified how different Conrad was. Transitions were very difficult for him. Even the simplest things, such as changing clothes, brought prolonged periods of distress. He threw fits which lasted hours. We had holes in the doors by the time he was 3, and many other examples, too numerous to list. We knew something was different, the struggle to understand the origin. We met with our pediatrician multiple times regarding the extreme behavior. Unfortunately, the prevailing wisdom at the time was better parenting was the solution to all problems. We read books, took classes, and still things continued to worsen. When Conrad and Hunter were younger, they were inseparable in spite of Conrad's ups and downs. Be patient with me. I don't do this for a living. Ann's much better at this. Although there were many bumps in their relationship, they spent a lot of time together. They even chose to share a room when it was not necessary. Things began to change in middle school. The mood swings were difficult, and because of these at times, he was very unkind and cruel. As Conrad became more difficult, things were more difficult for Hunter. Their relationship was strained, and it was hard to be the brother of the one constantly getting in trouble. We had continual calls from the school, and we had already had several run-ins with the police. By the time Conrad was a sophomore, drugs had become a problem, and his behavior was even more erratic. We were sure it was simply more than drugs. We tried to get him counseling, and were told, even as a parent of a minor, we could not make him go. Our only way to make him go was a court order. So our first opportunity that we had, we chose to have him arrested, and it happened to be on his 16th birthday. We spoke to the court and asked for mandated counseling. It was at this time we began to unravel his diagnoses. Unfortunately, before we could completely figure everything out, his drug use became worse. What you need to understand is life was very hard for my son. Drugs gave him a moment of peace from a world that he found very difficult. After one of his friends overdosed in our house, we thought Conrad would slow down. This was not the case. After having a discussion with his counselor, the conclusion was inpatient treatment was needed. Our insurance paid for 30 days, which we managed to stretch to 6 weeks. Unfortunately, we were told his problems were far larger than they could manage, and he needed long-term inpatient treatment. And the facility where he was not equipped to handle him. Those are difficult things to hear about your own child. We were told that we needed to send him to a long-term facility which dealt with dual diagnoses. Unfortunately, their policy did not allow them to recommend a specific facility. We were on our own. We did our best to find a place which treated dual diagnosis and ended up in New Mexico, and this is where he spent his junior year. Insurance did not cover this treatment, even though it was recommended by multiple doctors. In order to pay for it, we refinanced our house to the maximum and took money out of the retirement. And his treatment cost us $68,000 for 1 year. Our son received a diagnosis of rapid cycling bipolar, and unfortunately, he was asked to leave that facility and he came home worse. The next year was very difficult. He was under 18, so we had to keep him at home, and the school did not want him. He tested out of the GED program even. They gave him a practice test, and he got 100% on the science test and only 1 wrong on the math, with no practice, and only having attended 2 years of high school. So he was not eligible for that program either. So we spent a long year of trying to corral a child who needed far more structure than he was getting. By the time he was 18, we had no choice but to ask him to leave our house. We spent months not knowing where he was. As a mother, my heart was broken. The next time we heard anything was when we saw him on the news, arrested for the large vandalism spree in DeForest. We found out through the news and having a news crew outside our house. It was very difficult for his brother in school. Everybody knew. It's hard to live in a small town where everyone has a small part of the story, but not the entire story. Yet plenty of opinions are formed, and rumors and untruths are shared. Conrad contacted us from jail with a large amount of humility, and he needed help. We didn't hesitate. There were multiple court visits, and he was placed on probation. Of course, since he was not getting any help for his mental health issues, he violated probation multiple times. We had put conditions on him staying in our home. The truth is, there are certain rules you should follow for any addict. Never allow them alone in your home. Make sure all medications are secured where they cannot get to them. And finally, never give them money. Above and beyond those, he had to have a job, no drugs were allowed in our home, and no friends in the house. And we did do searches. Of course, eventually he broke our rules, and we had to ask him to leave again. He came home one final time when we found out he was growing marijuana and selling it. We knew we had to turn him in. It was the right thing to do, but it was a very difficult decision as parents. He ended up spending 18 months in jail. Again, he received no treatment. When he came out, he got a job right away and was working a great deal of hours. 1 month after leaving jail, our son Hunter found Conrad overdosed on our bathroom floor. Hunter managed to bring him back. Unknown to us, he had started to use heroin before he went to jail. He agreed he needed help, and we spent a month fighting with insurance trying to get him in. There are many more police encounters and frustrations I could share, but my goal is not to talk today about our family history, but to illustrate in some small way what a family of the mentally ill and/or addicts go through. Insurance rarely pays. There are no fundraisers to help with finances, no Hollywood starlets or leading actors wearing ribbons and speaking out on how we need to work towards treating these people. What it would mean for families if the community rallied around them. What if people called and checked in on them, offered meals, rides, or company when sitting waiting for court? We suffered with such profound loneliness while going through our trials. It would have meant a great deal for our community to rally around us just as they would have if Conrad was diagnosed with cancer. For the past 3 years, the number one killer of 14 to 22-year-olds has been overdose. Not cars, not suicide, overdoses, number one. Yet no public outcry to save these children. We are losing them by the thousands. The number is in the thousands every year. Addiction is a treatable disease, and yet the majority of insurance companies do not pay, or they pay at a greatly reduced amount. Brian Schimmel, head of the Wisconsin Department of Justice, said, there has been a 260% increase in opiate overdose deaths among 12 to 24-year-olds in recent years. And we have seen overall opiate overdose deaths quadruple. If we saw traffic deaths quadruple, we would be doing things that sounded crazy, like putting in roundabouts every 200 feet, or raising the driving age to 200. As humorous as that is, the truth is that is exactly, there would be huge outcry if we were losing that many people. Mr. Schimmel went on to talk about how the vast majority of the kids are not what society would deem as the bad kids, but the honor students, football players, and band members. I could share a great deal more statistics which are equally startling, but more importantly is what as a community are we going to do to save these people? I hear all the time how addicts choose this life, that it is a choice, not a disease. I'm here to assure you it's a disease. Not a single addict would tell you this is the life they dreamed of. We had dreams for Conrad when he was born, and we grieved the loss of those dreams. But by understanding what he was going through was not a choice but illness, we found a way back to love, compassion, and a desire to walk beside him through all the tough times. It amazed us to watch Hunter find a way to understanding. I recently found Hunter's poems from middle school. Many of them talk about how mean his brother was and how difficult it was to have him as a brother. We had many discussions with him about it being a disease. We also had to explain people with this type of illness do not make sense. They frequently behave in completely irrational manners. We talked about every single one of us is just one bad decision away from being in a place we never expected. You could be speeding on the interstate, look down to answer your phone, and crash into a guardrail or even another car, potentially changing your life and someone else's life forever. As time passed, he found a way to see his brother differently. The past 3 years, they have been closer than ever. Conrad always asked to speak to Hunter when he called from jail, and they would talk for a half hour, laughing and giggling. It was amazing to watch. I once asked how he managed to turn things around, and he said he finally just decided to see the things he loved about his brother and not focus on the bad. John and I have never been more proud. We've had the privilege of seeing God right there in our own son. Hunter saw Conrad as so much more than an addict. Conrad had a big heart, rescued any animal in need, loved his kitties like crazy. He defended anyone younger he thought was being picked on or hurt. He was brilliant and so funny. These are the attributes I wish the rest of the world had seen in him. I wonder what Conrad's life would have been like if people along the way had been able to see more than a problem. It's sad the current system is not set up to help people trapped by this disease. They are truly worth saving. On July 17th of 2015, my son Conrad lost his battle to addiction. I thought I could do this. It has shattered our family's heart as we pick up the pieces after losing him. We miss him every day. But what I want you to know is loving him in spite of all his problems made every single one of us a better person. I know I'm patient, compassionate, and grateful because he was my son. I know my husband is always looking to give people second chances because of our son. I know my son Hunter sees value in all the people he runs across in his job as an EMT and understands humans make mistakes. He knows these things because of loving his brother. God blessed us with a smart, funny, very special boy that changed our lives because we followed one simple lesson: love like Jesus did. I am so grateful we chose to do so.
Well, thank you very much, Mary, for sharing this story. It's a hard story to hear, but one of the reasons I really wanted her to share it here is because Columbia County is one of the leading counties of drug overdose and addiction, and it's just so easy to hide and not see it and not recognize it around us. I'm just as guilty of that, as a friend with Mary, and, I certainly didn't believe how much it impacts the lives of people right around us. People went to school with our sons, it was going on all the time. And even talking to my 16-year-old, he's very aware of the number of people that are doing some sort of drugs, and it's going on all around them. So I just wanted you to hear her story. I also wanted to encourage Mary to share her story today. She's been very courageous, and so I thank you for that, Mary. And we give thanks to God who gives us the capacity to love, even when it's hard, even when we don't understand it. It is amazing the bond of love between a mother and a child. I think it's very representative of God's love for us that just never gives up on us. Ever. So today, we will continue with our hymn of the day. And again, I choose these hymns because of the words and what they say to us and how they tie in with our message today. So we will join in the hymn. We are called number 720.